A man sits in his cell, quietly awaiting his deserved execution. He has almost come to terms with his fate. Just a few mere moments, and he will meet his end before the gun. He's barely 20 years old, and although he has apologized and regrets his crime, he also knows there's no way out of this. Or maybe, as if in some strange cosmic comedy, he received news he never expected. He has to pinch himself, checking if this isn't just another dream. His sentence has been changed to life imprisonment. This man, who was just steps away from death, is now one of the few who managed to slip through due to a decree by Rimas Bražinskas. Now, he could spend the rest of his life behind bars. At least, for once, luck was on his side. But the man who narrowly avoided execution receives another piece of news after many more years, something that could knock anyone off their feet. He will be released after just 5 years, from minutes away from execution to the sweet breath of fresh air. What was Rimas Bražinskas' story? Did he deserve redemption? And had he truly changed? Before committing the brutal crimes in 1990, very few details of Rimas Bražinskas' life are known. As I understand, he had a rather difficult life, which might have contributed to his later actions. He grew up in the late 1980s and the early 1990s, when the country was on the brink of independence from the Soviet Union. It is said that Bražinskas came from a poor family with troubled past. He had bad relationship with his parents, which may have pushed him to isolate himself and turn to crime. It was known that he was involved in petty crimes, which was common response for many young people at the time. However, there were no signs that something more violent would come. Rimas was just an anxious, angry teenager, like many others. About his childhood or early life, it's clear that Bražinskas grew up in the environment filled with crime, violence, and a future that didn't seem so bright to everyone around him. The crime that led to the young man's conviction occurred during the cold winter of 1990s, on December 29th. At just 18 years old, along with his accomplice, Gediminas Narkevičius, Rimas chose a dark path that would leave a significant mark on the country's criminal history. Bražinskas, growing thirst for violence, found its target in a taxi driver, a man who, like many others, was simply trying to make a living in tough times. The two young and strong men called a taxi in Alytus, in southern Lithuania, and eagerly waited their victim. They got into the red Žiguli, driven by 27-year-old Petras Sezonas, a man who already had a wife and 3-year-old daughter. Bražinskas was about to rob this man of his happy family life. They drove a little further and then, without warning, attacked the driver like wild animals, stabbing him repeatedly until they were satisfied that Petras was dead. But now, what to do with the body? Their minds were set on one solution: rob the victim and toss his body into the cold Nemunas River. After what they thought was Petras' death, they dumped him into the water. The mission was complete. However, something extraordinary happened just as they were returning to the taxi. Well, it might be considered a miracle if it had occurred just a bit later. Despite the numerous stab wounds and the shock of the cold water, Petras, even while sinking, was still alive. If these monsters had gone a little further, perhaps Petras could have saved himself, found help. But exhausted and barely conscious, when he dragged himself back to the shore, he encountered another hell. As he emerged from the cold water, the criminals couldn't let him live. Completely defenseless, Petras was attacked once again. They grabbed the scarf and began strangling him. There was barely any resistance, just the painful sound of a final breath from the young man. Once they were sure Petras was dead, they pushed his body back into the river, allowing the current to carry it away. There's no information on whether Petras' body was ever found or how the police managed to track down Bražinskas and his accomplice, but considering their lack of intelligence, I doubt their capture took long. Initially, the motives for the murder were unclear, but a theory soon emerged that the young men were driven by boredom, a desire for excitement, and complete indifference to human life. The police claimed they didn't intend to rob the taxi driver. Though they stole his car and money, they were simply trying to satisfy their twisted impulses. However, Bražinskas never denied his guilt. He confessed to everything and expressed regret. At just 18 years old, Bražinskas, as the primary perpetrator of this crime, was sentenced to death. However, his older accomplice, Gediminas, received only 15 years in prison, which personally seems illogical and absurd, but perhaps I don't fully understand the intricacies of the legal system. Now, after nearly 3 decades in prison, Bražinskas has radically changed his life. As I mentioned earlier, unlike many others, he never denied his crime. He admitted his guilt, expressed regret for his actions, and spent years behind bars reflecting of the life he took and the pain he caused. According to the prison administration, Bražinskas earned a good reputation within the prison system. He is known as a diligent man. He completed his secondary education and even continued his studies, enrolling at the local university to study social communication. Since 2008, he worked as a carpenter and was even promoted to a supervisory position. This seems to be proof that he possesses a strong work ethic and personal growth. The prison administration appreciates his contribution. His work wasn't just about securing a livelihood. Bražinskas created several artistic projects, including a wooden dollhouse that he donated to a local children's nursery. Prison guards describe him as disciplined, honest, and responsible. More importantly, he became a positive influence on other inmates, motivating them to work and not lose hope. In 2019, the Vilnius District Court made a historical decision. Bražinskas' sentence was reduced. He was left with 5 more years, after which he could apply for parole. His character change and personal growth convinced the court that he was no longer the same person who committed the horrific crime 28 years ago. The court took into account his repentance, effort to rehabilitate, and the fact that during his long sentence, he was not involved in any other violent incidents. He is described as a positive character, having accumulated considerable work experience, motivated and capable of motivating other inmates to work and organize the work process. He performs his assigned duties very honestly and well, introducing many innovations in the production process. He is characterized as honest, disciplined, responsible, hardworking, and proactive. He is also described as having mastered the profession of carpenter, knows how to use various tools and machines, and can make any device. In his free time, he engages in creative activities, making unique items from wood scraps, including a dollhouse that he donated to the Nemenčinės Children's Nursery. Reads the court's ruling. The legal changes occurred due to a new law passed in the early 2019, promoted by the European Court of Human Rights decision. In 2017, the court ruled that Lithuania violated human rights by not providing lifers with a real possibility of parole. Here are some snippets from Bražinskas' interview in prison. I make birdhouses. I get paid from 65 cents to a litus per birdhouse. The average income is 300 litus a month. I only needed to see the footage my brother shot. Barely recognize my own home, but I've seen litus and I've seen euros too. I try not to fall behind in life, but all my information comes from TV and newspapers, said Rimas, adding that he himself has fully compensated the financial damages to the victim's family. After being released, Bražinskas plans to live in the Alytus region, in a house owned by his brother. A letter was even submitted to the court stating that he would work on his brother's farm. Bražinskas claimed that he wouldn't be a burden to his family, as there was plenty of work on the farm, and he wouldn't be sitting idle. However, it seems that Bražinskas' streak of good fortune didn't stop. He didn't even serve the full 5 years. Just 3 years later, in 2022, he was released into the freedom and is now breathing fresh air. His journey from a death sentence to a model prisoner and finally to a free man is complete. But information about where he is now or what he's doing is hard to find. I had planned to try and find Rimas and interview him, but after everything I've read, he seems like more of a close-off person now. Someone who seeks peace. And, my principles, well, even if you've changed, even if you're a different person now, I don't want to give you any more of my attention when you so coldly took a young father away from his family for absolutely nothing. This case is a striking reminder of the complexity of the justice system. It shows that even those who committed the most horrific crimes have the potential to change, from an act of brutal violence to a person who relentlessly worked to atone for his past mistakes. While his release may be controversial for many, perhaps the most important question is how the victim's family feel about this. What do you think? Is this a changed person or the result of the justice system leniency? Thank you for watching this video to the end. Don't tell anyone else, but I think you're my favorite. As always, I look forward to your thoughts in the comments. And if you liked the video, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, or share the video with friends. Everything earns you karma points. Thanks again, stay safe, stay vigilant, and I'll see you next time.